What kind of situation does trying to understand the universe without revelation put the human race in? Now, I will show you a small piece from the striking videos I have saved in my archive regarding this. The person in the video explains that they are not saying the evolutionary process occurred randomly as is often assumed. We are not saying it's random, he says. Meanwhile, we observe that new atheists have an aversion to the word random. Although it was a concept frequently used by old atheists, words like random and chance have become so tainted now that a significant portion of new atheists are trying to distance themselves from these concepts. They claim they are not asserting that events in the universe happen randomly. Actually, it's a positive development. But look, where are they hitting their heads this time? The randomness in mechanisms like mutations is not a purposeless randomness. Like every event in the universe, it is determined and governed by the laws of nature. It is determined and governed by the laws of nature. Look, this is not a joke. I want you to understand this very well. This friend of ours, who says the process is not a purposeless coincidence, stated that the event is governed by the laws of nature, just like every other event in the universe. This belief is quite widespread in the scientific community, by the way. You can hear similar statements from many people, including Hawking. So, we won't just analyze one person's statement here. We will discuss a very general issue, a general comedy. Previously, we mentioned that the existing scientific method always points to the preceding cause as the agent of events. That was one of the fundamental beliefs of naturalism. But this also appears as a very important second principle as a second idol. Believing that events in nature are governed by the laws of nature. When you throw a ball into the air, is it chance or randomness that it falls back to a certain point? No. It is a process governed by the law of gravity, a law of nature. This is similar to this. Is writing the sentence, "Mert threw the ball," a coincidence or randomness? No, it is a process governed by the rules of the Turkish language. Now you think this happened by chance? I'm not saying it's a coincidence. There are Turkish laws, full of Turkish language rules. For example, proper names start with a capital letter. For example, 3 consonants cannot be next to each other. Or there is a rule called consonant affinity. This is what the law says. Look, you will see it here. Mert, word, starts with a capital letter. There is consonant affinity here too. Or here are some other rules. Those laws write that sentence. We didn't say it was a coincidence. When did we ever say it was a coincidence? Here, look, the issue is actually very simple. Incredibly simple. It's very simple if certain rules are not imposed on us. As soon as you see such a sentence, you begin to recognize its author. For example, you would immediately conclude that the author of this sentence knows Turkish, wouldn't you? Why is that? Because the rules of Turkish have been applied. This is very simple. And the writer is outside of what he writes. He is not of the kind of thing he writes, etc. Everyone understands these things very easily. But don't go outside the paper. You can explain everything in 2 dimensions of the paper. Anyway, we talked about these things. Let's get back to our topic. So, are we denying the laws of nature? Of course not. What we are saying is very simple. The writing of the sentence Mert threw the ball is no different from a ball being thrown into the air. Both are events where certain rules apply. Turkish rules are applied here, conjugation rules are applied there. Here is how to know the rules of Turkish and have the power to write the sentence and apply the rules of Turkish. We'll prefer, for example, to apply the rules of another language. If Turkish rules cannot write this sentence unless there is a consciousness with a will, in the same way that anyone who knows the law of gravity and has the power to apply it, and will prefer to apply the law of gravity exactly where it should be, rather than not, unless there is a consciousness with a will, the rule of attraction can't drop that ball. Just as this one introduces its author, so does this one. It is enough to use the same reasoning. By the way, what we call natural laws, we actually talked about this in the older video. Existing regular movements that we have sufficiently studied and formulated and named. In other words, not things that have an external body, but scientific things. Things that we come and see and not the regularities in the universe. To give a mathematical name to what is happening. First, we will see the event and put a name to it. And then we will say that this name is doing it. Can there be such illogic? Do we worship the laws we name ourselves? Do you worship what you carve? These are the names you and your ancestors called them. Does the law of attraction drop the leaf? We have already created that law. We have already defined it by looking at that incident of falling. The law only tells us the conditions under which the event took place. Just like the rules of Turkish explain the conditions under which a sentence is written. So he can't do anything himself. Now we're going to look at the biology, the living world, which is where I think the real shit is happening. Look, even the most absurd things, if they are inculcated in you regularly, after a certain period of time you become incapable of thinking otherwise. This topic is not such a simple matter. Perhaps I am talking about the greatest oppression that could happen to you right now. The result of this belief and ignorance targets your perception of existence. Then, for example, when we say, why does this newborn camel calf have a body perfectly suited to the place it will live? Look, by the way, I am talking about the camel born today, the newborn. Design illusionists, natural selectionists. Please pay attention to this detail. The millions of years of history of the camel species do not concern me right now. I am not addressing that. Assume we are addressing the most recent zygote camel process in nature. It says, wouldn't you look at the creation of the camel? A voice that wants us to take heed and recognize it. Now we are looking at its latest example. So, when we look at this event, we ask why this newborn camel calf has white feet and a humped body perfectly suited to the geography it will live in. Long and dense eyelashes, an eye in the zygote that can see the outside as a desert, a knowledge that calculates the need to store extra water, and the foot width that won't sink into the sand. There is no consciousness, mercy. When we say Allahu Akbar in amazement, because we received this encoded answer in its DNA. Look, the counter to that is not, well, who coded the DNA there? Do not forget the red stuff. Do not skip the chain. Do not stray from the moment. Keep questioning. Let's address this DNA topic, because this is also a very important veil drawn over our minds, and this resembles worshipping laws. Imagine two children, adorned with various architectures, examining a historical mosque with different features and admiration, trying to learn about its master. They look at the mosque. Apparently, he was very skilled in mathematics. He also understood acoustics. He was very meticulous and was a great master. They were about to say, when someone comes and says, children, it is not scientific to believe in things we cannot observe or measure. Where is this master you speak of? Can you see him from here? Then there's no need to believe in this master tale anymore. I will find out how this mosque was built for you. He says and returns after some searching with a notebook in hand. A project notebook. The mosque's project. Indeed, every feature of the mosque is detailed in the project notebook. Then he says, this project is what made this mosque. All the features you admire are within these projects. So there's no need to believe in such master tales. Hey, where are you going? I'm not saying it's coincidence. I'm saying the project notebook made it. Deoxyribonucleic notebook. I fill in the gaps with this. Now, our first response to this man is not, well, who drew that project then? Well, that is also a valid question, but if you skip that sequence, you cannot expose the ignorant state he is in. What we need to emphasize here is this. Can a project build a mosque? A project does not build a mosque. For the mosque to happen, you need to have someone who knows the project and has the power, and someone with the will to choose to implement the project in accordance with the values. DNA, project, code of living things, but he has the power to know that project, to apply the science by dominating everywhere. And who has the will to choose not to implement the project exactly according to the code there? We don't find these attributes in DNA itself, nor in the helicase that splits it, nor in other enzymes and elements. We see that all these elements are just the arrangement of dead substances in the periodic table, that's all. And whoever he is, he should also rule the belly of the camel in the other desert, because the same code is being applied there now. And it should even dominate the sun, because the laws of motion of physics here are obeyed there too. Giving it a fancy name like deoxyribonucleic acid doesn't solve the issue. There is a measure in every moment of a leaf's fall. But when we say we don't see the knowledge and consciousness to calculate this measure in either the leaf or the ground, and we seek the one who possesses such knowledge, even if we haven't heard the verse, a leaf cannot fall without his knowledge. Our mind will affirm this truth beforehand, but we get the answer, there is a law of gravity. The law does not make the leaf fall, the leaf falls by the law. Turkish grammar rules do not write sentences. Sentences are written using Turkish grammar rules. A project does not erect a mosque is erected with a project. Who applies the law of gravity? That's the question. But many minds are exposed to this dogmatic poison for years without being able to ask these questions. Science lessons, which should serve as a means to recognize God, take on a nature that distances people from God. Why? Because everyone thinks events are being explained as they read. How does a leaf fall so precisely? The law, it brings it down. The law takes it and brings it down like this. Nothing surprising about this. Why is the camel like this? Because we found its DNA. Why do the ears of the 300,000 babies born today as they should be, arms aligned perfectly, eyes positioned above as they should be, mouth below, teeth are made hard as they should be, while eyes are left soft as they should be? Can you imagine the opposite? We wouldn't want to have our tongue on our heel and not in our mouth, would we? Don't be afraid, we are not asked. but 300,000 times a day we see them put in the right place. As it should be, carbon is expelled from the body moment by moment, and oxygen is taken in. We can count millions. Look, out of millions of species, we can count millions, even for a single individual of a single species, the human being. Billions of such wise processes are taking place for each of the approximately 90 million human babies that are currently under construction in the womb. Before questioning what naturalistic science says about the origin of species over millions of years, we must question what he says about how the billions of creatures born today were born. This is where the mind-boggling comments begin. Because in every moment of life, there is a process that will be marveled at, that will be a proof of its creator. And when there is a process that makes one say, Subhanallah, Alhamdulillah, Allahu Akbar, to cover up all this evidence with the ignorance that the law governs this process and to dictate this to the masses. Each of the millions of individuals of millions of species born today, each of the millions of individuals of millions of species born today, to cover up this evidence with the delusion that his DNA is like that, is to be a murderer of astonishment. This is what the Quran calls great oppression. Because the only thing worse than killing a person's body is killing their humanity from existence, who does not recognize his Lord, who does not marvel. And an organism that does not prostrate itself to satisfy this astonishment cannot be human. Because these other things do not distinguish this organism from others. If you blunt and destroy the functions of the human organism, such as marveling at witnessing the attributes of the Creator, therefore prostration and gratitude, there is no greater cruelty than this. Except for a few exceptional conscious science teachers, science classes, in their current teaching methods, are the primary agents of this injustice. Anyway, while some see the solution in opening new Imam Hatifs, I again call on science students to question. Question the nonsense injected into you. Learn to distinguish, friends. Think about it. If someone said that raindrops falling to the ground were managed by angels, it would be called faith and mocked, right? But when thousands of scientists say the same process is governed by natural laws, not only is it not called faith and mocked, no one says, hey, what are you talking about? Can a law govern a process? Why can't he say? Because he's not on the faith bench, it's presented to you on the bench of science. Yet, it is also a belief, and it is an illogical belief without the slightest evidence. Look, gentlemen, monuments of naturalism. From here, the situation looks very amusing. At least know this. The situation seems very amusing to some. And I think what you should really reflect on, and what is very interesting, who are engineers, medics, pharmacists, and so on, that is, someone who's passed through your wheels, that is, someone who must have passed through your mechanisms. 1,400 years ago, an ancient book, Made the Logic of How a Leaf Falls, is found to be more rational and logical than the reasoning you establish as modern individuals of the 2000s. And not in a way that is blindly accepted, but after examining and investigating the matter. I believe this fact alone is evidence that this book is a true book. There is actually one step beyond this, but let's leave that for the next chapter.